Good evening, very good evening, everyone that's watching. We are live, everything is working. We are live on Lifelong Jewish Learning. We're live on Facebook. As always, our Monday Night Torah Unzipped class is dedicated in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef. And not only should the class be in memory of him, but also his wife, whose yahrzeit is next week, Tzipora bat Hoshea. And their son should have success with his medical procedure tomorrow, Emir Hashem. Everything should be healthy. Okay, so the class is in his merit, the merit of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef. But the subject of tonight's class and the topic is actually going to be an interesting, perhaps dangerous topic. I'm going to tell you the story of how I ended up at tonight's topic. This morning we were in Shul, so we have reopened our minyan Monday and Thursday and Sunday and Shabbos. So we have our minyans open, and obviously with masks and all the conditions that are required to keep a safe distance. Baruch Hashem, I'm blessed with a big room, so we have space. And one of the people that was in Shul this morning was discussing the classes and how he enjoyed last week's class and the comments and what I should teach this and I should teach that. So I'm a little hot-headed sometimes. I said, okay, you choose. You tell me, here's a chumash. I gave him a chumash. I said, here's a chumash. Tonight's class, you can pick any topic on this week's parsha, as long as it's this week's Torah reading, and you pick the topic, and that's what I'll teach. So he was a little, he didn't, whatever. But then he went home, and he actually texted me with the text that I'll read to you. I'll read to you exactly what he texted me. And what he wanted to teach is a little bit of a touchy subject, but I'm going to touch it. I'm not going to be afraid, especially because afterwards, this afternoon, at late afternoon, I was in someone's office, and I don't want to give away too much about who I went to visit. I'm going to talk about him too. And I had a conversation with him, and that conversation kind of confirmed for me, is better, that conversation confirmed for me the importance of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Let me first very, very briefly give you the story. I'm going to get more into that detail in a second. Just I want to give you clarity on where we're going tonight, and I want you to stay with us through the evening because I really plan on going a few levels deeper into the story of Pinchas. Pinchas, in 30 seconds, was a young, hot-headed member of the family of Levi, although he was not yet officially a priest. He witnesses a terrible act by a man called Zimri, who is the leader of the prince of the tribe of Shimon. He kills him and the Midianite princess with whom he was having an affair. And as a result of that, God says, Pinchas brought peace to the people, and he is rewarded for his act. And what we are going to do tonight, in addition to obviously understanding the story on a literal level and getting into some of the basic commentaries, understanding the story and the basic questions, is to understand lessons for us in today's supercharged, what's a good word? Hypersensitive, socially active, woke environment where everyone feels a need to show their righteous virtue and to protest, and for some very valid reasons, maybe not for valid reasons. I don't know, we'll see. We're going to talk tonight, we're going to directly address the issue of I wrote protest, but not only protest, the issue of getting involved and fighting for a better world, and where it's healthy and where it's wrong. And we're going to see the lesson that we can learn from Zimri, who acted on behalf of his tribe and was killed for it, and the lesson that we can learn from Pinchas, who did something that seemingly seemed very wrong and very dangerous and was rewarded by God for it. So it's a fine line that we're going to discuss tonight, but it's going to be very relevant to the conversations that are happening across America. And the reason why I'm doing this, besides the fact that I don't say I was dared into it, I didn't know what I was getting into. I said, you choose the topic. But the conversation I had this afternoon gave me clarity that we have a moral obligation to speak Torah values in a time of tremendous confusion and tremendous, I think confusion is the right word. And so living in the time of confusion in which we live and of chaos in which we live, I'm going to directly address the issues, but not my opinions. This is going to be a Torah perspective for us on the emotions that are running so high and the tensions and the intensity of viewpoints and the hatred of those that disagree with us. We're going to discuss that all, God willing, as we go through the story. So once again, good evening to all of you who are watching. Good evening, Irita and Eileen and Terry and Mitch and Louisa and everyone that's watching. I'm glad that you all are with us on Facebook, God willing, and all of you watching on Lifelong Jewish Learning. Feel free if you have any questions or comments, just comment. There's an option to comment, and you can comment. Okay. This is, I've given you the goal for tonight on two different levels that we're going to get to tonight. Understanding how we as Jews that live a life of Torah values are meant to behave, or meant to feel, seeing tremendous upheaval and what's tremendous wrongs in society and racial inequality and police brutality, all these issues that are being very emotionally dealt with. How are we supposed to react in all of these cases? Should we be protesting? Should we be rioting? Should we be, on Facebook arguing with people we've never met before in our lives? We're going to try and address that tonight. All from a Torah perspective in this week's Torah reading. And yes, Dylan, my beard is looking strong, thank God, although it is getting very white. Those who can see, it's getting very white. Okay, Jacob, Erev Tov, enjoy tonight's class. So let's get started right from the beginning. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share with you, straight from the text, the description of a story that happens when the Jews are near the land of Israel. A little bit of historical background before you read the text. Basically, the Jews have already conquered many of the nations that are living on the other side of the Jordan River, on the east side of the Jordan River. The king of Moab, his name is Balak, sees what's going on, he's very worried. He hires a prophet, a non-Jewish prophet, a sorcerer, to come and to curse the Jews. This man, his name is Bilam. Bilam comes to attempt to curse the Jews and to destroy the enemy, because Moab thought there was an enemy coming, to attack them and to avert the threat of the enemy. If you read last week's story, last week's Torah reading, Bilam comes, he tries several different times to curse the Jews. Each and every time that he wants to curse the Jews, instead of a curse, instead blessings come out. And some of the greatest blessings that the Jews ever get are blessings that are given not by a Jew, but by this Jew hater, by this anti-Semite Bilam that is eager to curse the Jews. He ends up giving some of the most beautiful blessings to the Jewish people, as well as the promise of Mashiach and the redemption. Bilam is leaving in disgrace. He's disgraced. He came to curse the Jews, he failed miserably. As he's leaving, he tells the Moabites, here's my advice to you. I can't curse the Jews, God didn't let me, because right now they have God's protection. Let me tell you how to make their God angry at them. And once their God is angry at them, they will lose the divine protection that they currently have. What's the plan? Make them sin with immoral acts. There is nothing that God hates more than immorality. When God sees the Jews behaving in lewd, improper, immoral behavior, this turns the wrath of God upon them. They lose their divine favor and the divine protection, and then they will be susceptible to be destroyed because they will have lost their divine protection. And so the Moabites set up this huge bazaar, a huge fair. And of course, they offer a lot of bargains. Jews love bargains. And so all the Jews come down to this massive fair that's being held to go and shop and find all these beautiful, sales. They come to the sales, the tents, where they're selling the stuff. And the Moabites tell them, you think there's good stuff here in the front? Come in the back. Everyone shopping with an Israeli, for you, special price, special for you. So they tell the Jews, come in the back tent here in the back room. I have my best product, my best prices. They come into the back, and there are Moabite girls that are waiting for them to seduce them. Immoral women, harlots, they come, they seduce the Jewish people. And at the moment of temptation, when they're in the midst and in the heat of the moment, they put before them these idols called Baal Pa'or, an idol that was very popular in the time of Moab. And they tell the Jews to worship these idols. And sadly, they do worship the idols. And as you can imagine, God becomes very, very angry at them. That is the story, that is the context, the historical context of what we're about to discuss. Let us read it now in the actual text. I'm going to read from you, oopsies. This is for actually the end of last week's Torah reading, and then we're going to get to the beginning of this week's Torah reading. So very quickly, chapter 25, verse number 1, Israel settles in a place called Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of the Moabites. They invited the Moabites, they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate, and they prostrated themselves to their gods. Israel became attached to Baal Pa'or, this name of the idol that I just mentioned a second ago. Baal Pa'or is a very interesting kind of idol, but that's not for tonight's class, although it could be a whole class in and of itself. Israel became attached to Baal Pa'or, and obviously God got very angry at them. And the Lord, verse number 4, the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people, hang them before the Lord facing the sun, and then the flaring anger of the Lord will be removed from Israel. So what happened? Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you shall kill the men who became attached to this idol to Baal Pa'or. So as you can imagine, the people are afraid. They're afraid. Then an Israelite man came and brought the Midianite woman to his brethren before the eyes of Moses and before the eyes of the entire congregation of the children of Israel, while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Pinchas, now let me stop here for a second. Who was this Israelite man? This Israelite man, we're going to read in a few seconds. His name was Zimri. Zimri is the leader of the tribe of Shimon. But it's important to know why he's doing what he's doing. The main culprits that were involved in the sin with the Moabite girls primarily were from the tribe of Shimon, tribe of Simon. These people realize that they're about to be sentenced to death for their sins, for their immorality and their idol worship. They're crying, the Torah says. They're afraid of being punished. They run to their prince, to the leader, and say, Zimri, help us. So Zimri makes a public act of defiance against Moses. To defend his people, or at least seemingly to defend his people, he publicly gets up and he begins to challenge Moshe's authority. And he takes this Midianite girl into his tent, the princess, the daughter of the Moabite king. And he says to Moses, tell me, is this Moabite girl allowed to me or not? And of course Moses says no. So he says, you also married a Midianite girl. You also married a Midianite girl. Zipporah, the wife of Moses, was from Yisro. Yisro is the father-in-law of Moses, was an idol worshiper, was a priest of the nations. And so you yourself took a non-Jewish girl for a wife. So how could you criticize me? Now Moshe was directly attacked by Zimri. It's a very, very public and strong act of defiance, and he has no response. So what happens? Imagine, all the Jews are standing around. They see Zimri, the leader, the prince of the tribe of Shimon, take this probably scantily clad Midianite princess into his tent with a very public dare, so to say, against Moses. How could you tell me she's forbidden to me when your wife is also a Midianite girl? And everyone's standing around, confused, not sure what to do. And it is at that moment that Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, saw this. He arose from the congregation and he took a spear in his hand. He takes a spear. He went after the Israelite man into the chamber. He went into the tent and drove it through both of them, the Israelite man and the woman, through her stomach, meaning he came out of the tent holding, only finish, those that died in the plague, number 24,000. He goes into the tent. Let me explain what he did. He goes into the tent with a spear. He's holding a spear in his hand, a little more lethal than this pen, and he stabbed them as they were in the act of intercourse. As he stabbed Pinchas and this Midianite girl, they were stabbed together. As he took them out, God gave him superhuman strength, and he carried them out of the tent, attached, the two of them attached to the spear, still in the act of intercourse, to prove that they died in the act of a sin, and that he was justified in his act of killing these people. Okay? This is the story, what he does. However, it sounds pretty ferocious. The Jews begin to complain. And the Jews begin to say what this man did is not right. What this man did is not right. Even though the plague stopped, 24,000 people died from the wrath of God, that these people were worshiping in idols and committing acts of idolatry and acts of immorality. And people begin to say negative things about Pinchas. And it is at that moment that God decides to show to the world that Pinchas, what he did, is good. What Pinchas did was righteous and honest. So what happened? So let's read. Oopsies, let's hide this. And let's read the opening word of this week's Torah reading. So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, we're still in chapter 25, verse number 11. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, has turned my anger away from the children of Israel by his zealously avenging me among them, so that I did not destroy the children of Israel because of my zeal. Therefore, that's what God says. God says that this Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, has turned away my anger, and therefore I say, I am giving him my covenant of peace. In the Hebrew, I am giving him as brisi, meaning notes and lo, as briti shalom. I'm giving him my covenant of peace. And this covenant of peace, it shall be for him and for his descendants after him as an eternal covenant of kahuna, meaning of the priesthood. Pinchas, even though he was the nephew of Moses, he was a grandson of Aaron the Kohen Gadol, he was not yet a priest. I'll explain in a second. He was not yet a priest because he had been born before the family of Aaron become priests. Therefore, God says, because he was zealous for his God and atoned for the children of Israel, I'm going to make him a priest. Let's just finish off. The name of the Israelite man who was killed, who was slave with the Midian woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, the chieftain of the Shimonite, the Simonite paternal house in the tribe of Shimon. And the name of the Midianite woman who was slain was Cosbi Bas Tzur, the daughter of Tzur, a national leader of the house of Pinchas. Okay, this is the story. Crazy story. He goes, he kills two people, and God says, I am going to give him my covenant of peace. What he did is so great, so righteous, so beautiful. I am so proud of him. I am going to give him my covenant of peace. How do we understand that? How do we explain it? How is it even justified to take the law into your own hands and to do that? And this was a text message I received, that taking the law into your own hands is, we would think, never okay. I'm a parent, and every parent tells their children, you cannot take the law into your own hands. If she hits you, or if she's teasing you, that doesn't give you permission to hit her back. You have to come and tell me, right? So how did Pinchas have the legal authority to take the law into his own hands and to kill Zimri, the prince, and the Midianite princess Cosbi? Number two question we're going to deal with now is not only legally, that's the first question, but morally and ethically, why is his act considered such a righteous act, such a upstanding act that God says he has earned my covenant of peace. Okay? Hope that you are going to stay and hear what we have to explain. Very important messages that we're going to hear from this. Let's first discuss the legal aspect. The legal aspect is as follows. There is a law in Jewish law called Kanoim Poigin Boy, which means in English that in the case where you see someone committing a crime of immoral behavior and there's no one there to stop him, and the person is overwhelmed with a honest spiritual zealotry, a spiritual fanaticism that comes over him, that tells him that what this person is doing is terrible and he deserves a death sentence. If the person, on the spur of the moment, in the middle of the crime, acts on his own spiritual fervor, his fanaticism, and kills this sinner, Kanoim Poigin Boy means he is authorized to stop the crime from taking place in front of his eyes. However, even though this is the law, the Talmud also says halacha ve'ein morin, which means there are certain laws that you don't teach. If this is indeed the law, and indeed from a legal perspective, a zealot, a spiritual zealot that is so deeply hurt by seeing someone committing an immoral crime against God, which they would normally be liable to the death sentence by a court, is allowed to take the law into his own hands and to commit an extrajudicial killing, but we don't teach this law. This is not a law that will be taught to our kids in school. This is not something that is acceptable as to be taught. And therefore, here's what happened. Here's the story. When Pinchas, amongst all the other Jews that are watching, he's a young man, sees this prince of the tribe of Shimon taking this Midianite princess into his tent publicly with his threats, his dare to Moses, and everyone's standing there silently. So Pinchas goes running to his teacher, to Moses. You see him committing a crime. Why are you standing by silently? Go and kill him. Don't wait to afterwards file a court case. So Moshe says, you're right. The one who read the letter should be the one to carry out the decree. You're the one who felt it. You're the one that should act upon it. Moshe forgot the law. Moshe did not remember this because Moshe, it was personal. So Moshe, I can relate. When you get personally attacked, you start to think differently. You start to behave in a different way than you would behave if you were feeling objective about the situation. So Pinchas then goes, since Moshe told him, you were the one that read the letter, you should act it out. So he goes, he attacks the two of them, and he stabs them with a spear, and he kills them. That's the halach. That's the law. So from a legal perspective, there is legal precedent, not the right word, but a legal source, although we don't teach it. And although it's not recommended for public, don't try this at home. But if you on your own are so spiritually aroused, and so spiritually incensed by what you witnessed, you are entitled to act upon it, which is what Pinchas did. And that's why he was innocent for having killed these people. Just like if you see someone breaking into a home or committing a crime, during the moment of the crime, you are entitled and legally justified in killing the person. If the crime is no longer happening, you're not allowed to take the law into your hands anymore. The law, if the person is no longer committing a crime, even though they may even be running away, but you're no longer entitled to take the law into your own hands, and you have to call the police, wait for them to come, and hope that they can arrest him and try him, and hope the judicial system and the legal system does its due process. But you can only take your law into the law into your hands at the moment of the crime if you feel it on your own without being taught to do so. That's the legal dimension of this story. But that's not really the question that has lessons for us today. What we need to deal with is the ethical, moral lessons for us. What was Pinchas doing? So to address this, I'm going to go back to the text for a second, and I'm going to show you something which seemingly, a question on the text that Rashi explains. The text that we read tonight, not once, but twice, tells us the lineage of this man Pinchas. If you remember, when we started reading, the Torah told us, first of all, we already know, let me just say, that we already know exactly who Pinchas is, because we've already been introduced to him during the census of the Jewish people in the book of Exodus, and we know who he is. This is not the first time that he's mentioned in the Torah. Now, it's not a question, the fact that if in the earlier book it describes the lineage, and we know who Pinchas is, that it will say again in our story, Pinchas is the son, the grandson of Aaron the high priest. It's not a problem that it should say it once again, but to say it twice in a few verses is a problem. So if you look here in chapter 25, so here's chapter 25, right over here, in verse number 7. Verse number 7 says that Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen saw, and he took a spear in his hands. So we know exactly who he is, right? What happens? This is verse number 7. What happens now in verse number 11? We are talking now from verse number 7 to verse number 11. We're talking about how many verses? 4 verses, 5 verses. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, has turned my anger away from the children of Israel. So the obvious, by the way, he mentioned also who is Zimri. I'll point out later. Zimri is from the family of Shimon. Remember this line too. But the obvious question that has to be addressed here, from a technical perspective, but it has a very important lesson for us, is why does the Torah twice, in verse number 7, and again in verse number 11, feel the need to tell us who Pinchas' grandfather is? Why is the grandfather of Pinchas relevant to the story of Pinchas killing Zimri? Now let me tell you why. The Jews, this is what I'm saying now is what Rashi says. The Jews begin to complain about the behavior of Pinchas. And they say, this man Pinchas that killed Zimri, he's no saint. He's no religiously motivated holy man trying to avenge the honor and the glory of God. He's a bloodthirsty criminal. He is a cruel person who takes pleasure in hurting others. He takes pleasure in killing others. And he just found a legal pretext to justify and to rationalize why he did what he did. And they find proof to their claim. Pinchas has 2 grandfathers on his mother's side and his father's side. So his paternal grandfather is Aaron the high priest. His maternal grandfather is Yisro. Yisro is the priest of the Midianites, who in his youth was responsible for fattening calves for the sake of slaughter. There is a certain cruelty and a certain lack of sensitivity to an animal to fatten a calf in order to later slaughter it. So since Pinchas came from the lineage, he had the genetic disposition of his maternal grandfather Yisro, who Yisro was a calf fattener in order to then slaughter these calves. They said, we have proof that Zimri is no religiously motivated saint. We have proof that Zimri's motivations were self-serving. We have proof that Zimri is inherently a pathological, cruel, evil person who takes pleasure in hurting others. So when he saw Zimri committing this crime, he didn't kill Zimri because of what he did wrong. He killed Zimri because he wanted an excuse to kill people in a public display. And therefore, the Torah feels the need to repeat a second time the lineage and the family background of Pinchas. Not only does the Torah feel the need, God himself, the verse says, so says God, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol. Now, I am sure that many of you watching are familiar with the trademark behavior of Aaron the Kohen Gadol, Aaron the high priest. Aaron the high priest was a man of peace. Aaron was a man, as the ethics of our fathers describes Aaron as a man who loved peace, who pursued peace, and did everything he could to bring peace between others. He was an Ohev Shalom. He was a lover of peace. In fact, he was such a peace-loving person that Aaron, whenever he heard that there were people that were involved in any kind of dispute or any kind of marital issue between the husband and the wife or between the two friends, he would personally intervene to try and bring peace between them. And the Talmud actually says that he would go and he would hear that two people had a fight. So he would go up to Joe and say, Joe, you know that Jack told me? It wasn't true. He would say, do you know that Jack told me he feels terrible he got into a fight with you? He feels so bad about what he said to you. And he really wishes he didn't say it. And he really wishes that he didn't, say what he said. He didn't mean it. But he's too embarrassed to say he's sorry to you. But he really feels bad about what he did. And then he would go to Jack, say, Jack, you know what Joe told me? Or the other way around. Joe, do you know what Jack told me? Jack told me that he feels terrible. He feels so miserable about what he said to you. He wishes he never said it. He wishes he didn't mean it. You should, you should go speak to him. He really wants to apologize. Each one was thinking that the other one felt bad, and they would meet each other in the street, and they would make up, and they would be happily ever after, and they got along. So much so that Aaron brought peace between. I think I mentioned this in a recent class, that there were many, many children in Israel who were called by the name of Aaron because the parents only came back together and were intimate and conceived the child because of the efforts of Aaron to bring peace between the husband and the wife. Therefore, when Aaron dies, the mourning for Aaron is actually much greater than the mourning for Moshe. Anyway, the Torah here is making a very important message. God himself is saying, do not make the mistake. Do not think that the reason why that Pinchas did what he did is because he is the descendant who contains the genetic disposition of his maternal grandfather Yisro, Jethro, the idol worshiper, who fattened calves in order to young animals in order to then slaughter them. But you should know he has the genetic personality, the DNA of Aaron, of the man who loved peace and who pursued peace and did anything he could to bring peace between people. This is the story of Pinchas. Therefore, God says, because of his nature to be peaceful, therefore, even though he was born before the family of Aaron became priests, he has earned of his own merit, from his own actions of killing Zimri, which were actions of peace, and I will explain that soon. Because he has killed Zimri as an action of peace, therefore he has earned the right in and of his own, not just because he was born into it, because he was born as a priest. He didn't get it by birth. On his own merits, because of his actions that he did, which were actions of peace, I am going to give him my covenant of peace. Now, obviously, we need to explain this better. We need to understand this in light of today, what we're seeing today in America. But before I get to that, I want to make another very, very important lesson, because I want to kind of build up, and then we'll end with the message that's relevant for today, with the Rebbe's, whatever I'm going to say now is from the Rebbe. It's not my own feelings or thoughts. I'm only teaching. I'm a vessel to teach Torah thoughts. So two messages we need to take from the story. Two messages. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate your kind words. 1 second. Okay, so let's get to the first lesson. And then I'm going to explain. Let me first take the message, how the Jews judged him wrongly, and then we're going to go deeper and understand what God is saying about the actions of Pinchas, and importantly, how we compare the action of Pinchas in comparison to the action of Zimri, the prince of Shimon, that seemingly acted nobly, but actually something very wrong. Okay, so There's a message over here. The Jews right away judge Pinchas. They judge Pinchas and they say that the way he behaved was, hello, Daryl, how are you? They say that the actions of Pinchas were evil. Why? Because they didn't judge him by his motivation, or they assumed, they judged him by his motivation because his actions stopped the plague. His actions stopped the plague, so they couldn't say that his actions were bad. I mean, they saw clearly that after he killed Pinchas, after Pinchas killed Zimri, the plague stopped. So they couldn't critique his actions. So what could they critique? His motivation. And they can say that don't be fooled by the fact that his actions were seemingly religiously and righteously motivated. Don't be fooled by that. Really deep down, his motivations were not. That is what they tried to do to diminish and take away from his character. And unfortunately, we sometimes do that. We see someone acting in a holy way, and instead of judging them favorably, we stand instead to judge them negatively. You know, in Ethics of Our Fathers, it says, have a dan, it's called an adam lekafsos. You need to judge every person to the side of merit. So it's a favorable judgment. Meaning, the Torah itself, God himself is coming to say to the Jewish people, you misjudged. You misjudged Pinchas. You are assuming negative, ulterior, self-centered, evil motives to his righteous actions. You're misjudging him. You have to learn to judge favorably. The problem is that often we train ourselves to right away not trust people. Kids by nature are trusting, and as we get older, either because we got burnt or because we're warned not to speak to strangers, don't trust people, don't be naive. And there are people that try to take advantage of us. So what happens? We learn to become distrusting and mistrusting. And when that happens, it's not good. There's a greater danger. When we misjudge others, and instead of assuming noble, righteous intent to their actions, but instead we judge them in an unfavorable way, we actually cause damage to ourselves. There's something called self-deception, and I'm sure you all can imagine what it is. But really, what should happen when we see someone behaving in an honorable way? When we see someone behaving in an honorable way, we should be motivated by their actions to follow them, to emulate them, to try and be like them. What happened when Pinchas was the only one of all the Jews that were gathered together? They're all standing there. They all witnessed Zimri taking Cosby, the princess, into his tent. They all saw it. It was done deliberately in a public display. And yet nobody else is motivated to go and stand up for the honor of God and to go and to kill this person, to stand up for God's glory. Only one young man called Pinchas. And therefore, they feel embarrassed. They feel inadequate. They feel Moses didn't stand up, Aaron didn't stand up, the other princes didn't stand up, the great rabbis and the elders didn't stand up. So this guy, who is he? Meaning the correct approach, the right approach, is to say, he did something right, I didn't do something right, I need to learn from his behavior. Instead, what do? We misjudge and negatively judge the other person. You know why? To assuage our own guilt and to make us feel comfortable in being not where we should be, not behaving the way we really should. And so instead of using the righteous behavior and the moral behavior of Pinchas or me and you, and we see someone behaving the right way, instead of being motivated by their love, by their caring, by their selflessness, by their generosity, and saying, wow, look at how generous that person is. Really, I should be more generous too. What we do, and I hear this all the time, and it makes me, I don't like it. They're just doing it for the plaque. They're just doing it for the honor. They're just doing it for, I don't know, for the write-off. They're just doing it. When we judging other person negatively, not only are we doing a sin and judging unfavorably, and then we're creating a negative habit in our own mind of seeing the bad of others instead of seeing the good in others, we're actually allowing for self-deception, and we're allowing ourselves to continue to remain in our own quagmire, in our own feeling of complacency, in our own feeling of I'm good the way I am, because the fact that that person behaved better than me, and that person is more generous, and that person gave more charity, that person went to shul, and that person prays more, whatever it is, they're not doing it for a reason. It's all for show. It's all fake. They're motivated. Yeah, they're doing good things. I can't question their actions, so I'm going to question their motivation. I'm going to question what inspired them to behave the way they behaved. That's what the Jews did to Pinchas. So there's such an important lesson for us here. When we see others behaving in a manner that is evil, when we can't judge their behavior, instead of judging them, instead of being motivated by them and learning from them and being inspired by them, instead we put them down. We judge them negatively. We try and imagine in our mind what's their inner motivation, what's really their hidden agenda, their hidden, bias. And then not only does that make us put them down, make us negative about them, it makes us then not be challenged ourselves to grow and become better people. This is our general lesson for life. Whenever you see someone being more generous, being kind, being spiritual, being sensitive, don't assume negative reasons for it. Assume good reasons for it, and then that will motivate you to become a more giving, kind, sensitive person. By the way, this is especially true regarding the protesters and regarding those that wear masks and those that don't wear masks and those who believe in Corona, those who... I hear from so many, on so many sides of the aisle, on whatever the issue is. It's not even about any one issue per se, whether it's about supporting of Israel, whether it's about voting for the president, whether it's about supporting whatever it is. The people, I'll say it this way, don't judge their motivation. Let me just say that. Someone that's a Democrat can still love Israel. Someone that voted for the president can still love Israel, can still love America. So the motivation is good. When people fight and they argue and say that if you don't wear masks, you're a criminal. If other people say, if you wear masks, you're giving into government control and to hype and mass media hysteria. They may be right, they may not be right. It's not the point, at least not for tonight's discussion. The point is that we don't have the right to judge the motivation of other people. The Jews messed up by judging the motivation of Pinchas. We don't know what's in someone's mind. And I know many people who behave in very different ways, but because I try and understand them and listen to them and understand where they're coming from, I can tell you that I know people on both sides of the aisle of many different issues that are both motivated by love for their country. They're motivated by love for America. They're motivated by love for Israel. They're motivated by care for safety. And some people think that if we give into government control, then next thing you know, they'll be forcing vaccines upon us and they'll be tracking us. So they may be right, they may be wrong. The point's not what their action is. The point is to appreciate that they're motivated by a concern for what's best for our society, what's going to be the long-term best for us. And the same thing is politically, and the same thing is with so many of the issues today. Don't judge the motivation of others. They're all coming from a good place. All the actions are coming from a good place. I mean, they might not be, by the way. I should say always been from a good place. Usually they are, but we don't have the ability to know that. We have no way of judging. We are not God. We can't read the thoughts of man. We can't know what's going on in someone's mind. So if someone behaves in a certain way, it's not our place to judge their motivation, especially when they're arguing for something good. And everyone's arguing for something good, by the way. You may not agree that it's good because you have a different perspective. But in their mind, there is no one in this country, I said unequivocally, there is no one in this country that is fighting or arguing for something that they think is bad for the country. Nobody. They all think it's good. So we can't judge their actions because they think they're doing something good. We try and judge their motivation. And it's a mistake. It's a big mistake. So that's the first lesson we can learn from God telling us that Pinchas' motivations were good. But now let's go even deeper. Let's go even deeper. Hello, Morty. Hello, Claudia. Hello, everyone else that's watching. We're going to get to the good stuff, the real stuff. Because Torah has a lesson for us at all times. Okay, I'm going to introduce with a story to explain why I'm going to say what I'm going to say next. Oh. I was in someone's office this afternoon. And he's telling me, this is a person who I know is very motivated to help Black people. A Jew that is truly, and I say, I know him well, I know him for many years. He's an ideologically driven person that loves all humanity, who is a real civil rights activist. When he was young, he was fighting and all that for civil rights and for equality and liberty. He tells me, unsolicited, he has a problem with the Black Lives Matter. He's torn. He's in a deeply emotionally conflicted place because Black Lives Matter is an anti-Semitic organization, which is a statement of fact. It's not an opinion. I'm not making any judgments. I'm telling you a reality. So he's torn. He wants to help the Black community. He really does. And I know this. I know things he's done. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give it away because I didn't ask him to talk about him in tonight's class. I know that he has been involved in things to help the Black community. I know firsthand. And yet, the way the protests have gone and the people that have taken over the narrative are people that he cannot align himself with because he's also very strongly pro-Israel, etc. And we were having a discussion, and I realized that we have an obligation to speak our Torah truths. When you're judging a police officer, you don't need to judge the motivation. No, you don't need to. You're not allowed to judge him, or you're not supposed to judge him, rather, by his motivation. You have to judge him by the law, by the book. Why? Because he's acting by the book. Meaning when we're talking about not Pinchas, Pinchas behaved in an extrajudicial manner. Therefore, we judge him not by his actions, but by we could try to judge him not by his actions, but by his motivation. But when you're talking about a judge, or in today's society, talking about a police officer, when you're talking about a judge, you don't judge, well, the judge is motivated by this way, that way. Meaning, I've never understood why we're talking about a Supreme Court ruling. It always has to be that this judge was appointed by this president, that judge was appointed by that president. They're not allowed to be political figures. So a judge is meant to be judged, or an officer, or anyone that's in the actual legal system, they're acting by the book of the law, and therefore they should be judged by the book of the law. So, for example, I'm going to be very honest. Let's have an open conversation. When Derek Chauvin is putting his knee on the neck of an innocent person, he stole $20, whatever he did. Someone didn't deserve to die anyway. Which is against protocol, because once a person is handcuffed and they're restrained, and especially once they're not resisting arrest anymore, what happened in the back of the car, we don't know. But definitely once he was on the ground, and especially once he stopped talking, I think it was like 3 minutes or 4 minutes from after he stopped talking, that they were still on top of him. That is by any protocol, is against protocol. I had a meeting with the police here in Coral Springs. They said they don't understand the general rule of, first of all, in Florida, that kind of behavior, putting a knee on someone's neck, is against protocol since, I think, 1980 something. But the general rule is when someone is handcuffed and restrained as a crowd, you don't keep him there. So they broke protocol. They broke the law. So we don't judge him. Did he do it because George Floyd was black, because he was white? If he was white, would he not have put his knee on his neck? I don't know. I don't claim to be God. We don't have the ability to judge the actions, the motivations of these officers because we're not God. What we do have the right to do is to judge their actions by what is proper behavior and proper protocol and proper training for a police officer. And proper police training does not say to keep your knee on the neck of a person who is silently lying on the floor, non-responsive for over 3 minutes. So it's 8 minutes total, or 7 minutes, whatever, since he stopped talking. So they didn't do what they were supposed to by the law. And thankfully he was arrested. He's going to be tried. I'm sure he's going to be found guilty of whatever degree of murder they're going to, manslaughter, whatever they're going to find him guilty of. He's going to go to jail. And that's that discussion. So we have to differentiate. When you're judging a person within the judicial legal system, we judge their actions based on what their actions should be. We have no right to judge their motivation. However, here we're going into dangerous water. Here's what the Jews did. When you're judging a person who's not acting within the legal framework, you're judging someone who's acting from a place of emotional pain, from raw anger, who's acting out of a urge to make the world a better place. And they're protesting, which protesting is not only is it a constitutionally protected obligation, right, but it's actually a moral thing to do. When you see something injustice, we have an obligation to speak up. Here, you can't judge them by their actions because they're not in the legal system. So here, we try and say what they're doing is wrong because their motivations are wrong. That is exactly what the people were trying to do to Pinchas. They were trying to say that we know that what they're doing, they're saying good things. Yeah, obviously Black Lives Matter, every life matters, but the motivation is wrong. Maybe it is wrong. So what do they want? So in this conversation that I was having with this person today, he was telling me, like, I don't know what the Black community wants. I don't know how to help them. Okay, thank you. And as I was saying before, that's why I decided to speak up, because I don't know what they want. So we have to judge a person based on his motivation. But we don't know someone's motivation. We don't know. So let's look at the difference between what Pinchas did and what Zimri did, and let's see what lesson we can learn. Okay, stay with me here. Pinchas, don't look at that way. Zimri acted in a seemingly noble manner. You know what Zimri did? He did a crime. He did a crime. He took a non-Jewish woman into his tent. But he officially was doing it because he was defending the people of his tribe that had done a sin. And they came to him for help. So he is acting on their behalf. So what's he really doing? He's doing something wrong, saying, I'm doing it for the right motivation. Listen to what I just said. He was doing something wrong, saying, I'm doing it for a good motivation to defend my people. What did Pinchas do? Pinchas did something which was within the legal guidelines. He killed someone within the halacha of Kanaim, with the agreement of Moshe that he was religiously motivated, seemingly with negative motivations from his grandfather Yisro that fattened cows in order to slaughter them. There's a hypocrisy almost over here, where Pinchas was judged on his motivation, which they thought was wrong, and his actions were good, and his actions led to stopping the plague. And Zimri, who they wanted to glorify, where his actions were bad and was increasing the plague, they wanted to say his motivations were good. And here is where we find the difference. If your motivation is good, then it should lead to good actions. If your motivation is truly good, it has to lead to good actions. A fanatic means that I don't care about myself. What's the definition of a fanatic? We're judging by motivation, right? So what's the definition of a fanatic? I don't care about myself. Fanatics, by definition, are not self-serving. They're ideologically driven, totally ideologically driven. So Pinchas is a person who is saying, I'm not afraid to risk my life and to go attack Zimri, the prince of the tribe of Shimon, because it bothers me something terrible is being done, an immoral act is being done in public. So his action leads something good happening. What's it leading to? The stopping of the plague. The stopping of the plague. So now we can judge. We can't judge his motivation. We're not God. But we know that his actions were good. The Jews couldn't question his actions. On the other side of the coin, you have Zimri. Zimri is a prince. Zimri is a prince of Moab. Sorry, he's a prince of Shimon. And he's conducting an immoral act. He's indulging in a sin. That's bad. But why is he doing it? Because as a leader, he's following after the sin of his people. He's following after the mob, so to say, in current terms. He's following after those that have led him, that have sinned, and he's now trying to defend them and to be with them. So his actions are a continuation of sinful actions that were done before. So that proves to us that his motivation was bad motivation. How do we know today if it's good motivation or bad motivation? We don't really know. We cannot judge, as I said earlier tonight, we cannot judge the motivation of why people that we disagree with politically behave the way they do. We're not God. We can't judge because we don't know their hearts. And in fact, very often their hearts are, in today's political climate, many people have viewpoints that are coming from a true desire to make our country better, from a true desire to help others. So we can't judge people's motivations. What could we judge? How should we know we should be part of a protest or part of a group, part of Black Lives Matter, whatever it is? Look at the actions. Look at the results of the actions. Look at the results of the actions. Pinchas's actions they were dangerous actions. They seemed to be cruel. They were killing a person. But even though they were seemingly cruel, they were motivated by good, and therefore they led to good results. They saved the lives of the Jews that were dying in the plague. Zimri's actions led to endorsing and encouraging sin. They continue the plague. I'm debating if I should go further, but the Black Lives Matter movement, look at the actions of what they're doing. What I'm saying again, it's not my opinion. I'm sharing you just using the Torah wisdom that we just learned together to defund police. Who's going to be hurt by that? Who will be hurt by less police officers? By police that are afraid to go into Black communities because they're afraid of what will happen to them. The people that will be hurt are Black people. So I'm going to speak now because we have an obligation to care for our Black brothers. And if we act like Zimri, and unfortunately the majority of our politicians today are acting just like Zimri did, who was the leader of his tribe then, and they're allowing their actions to be continuations of the mob. So what's going to be the result of our actions? The result of our actions is of these actions, of protesting against police and all that, the result is going to be more Black people will be killed by Black people. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a statistical fact. So if we really care, if we're really motivated for the other people, if we really care for saving lives, we really care for the lives of people that are living in dangerous areas, then we can't give in to the mob mentality, continue what Zimri was doing with his tribe. We have to be like Pinchas. Pinchas is willing to stand up and say, I'm not going to stand silent while everyone else is silent, which is why I decided to have the courage to say what I'm saying tonight. I'm not going to stand silently tonight. I'm not going to stand silently and watch everyone else. I am going to stand up for Black Lives Matter, which means not going into the mob. It means actions that might seem cruel on the outset, but that actually will, in the long run, save lives. I think I made my point. First of all, the first point is that there's a Torah lesson for us in the craziness of the world we live in. Open up the Chumash, this week Torah reading, and there's a lesson for us in what's going on. To compare the actions of Pinchas, who even though he killed someone, the Torah tells us his motivation was straight from a man who loved peace. Aaron was a man who loved peace. And therefore we need to learn from Pinchas to be a man who loves, before that. We need to learn from the mistake of the Jews who judged the motivations of Pinchas, not to judge people's motivations. That's first of all. Second of all, we need to learn from Pinchas's actions to be willing to do things that might seem politically incorrect or might seem not like the mass, group think mentality of today, to stand up for what's truly right and to act with religiously motivated, righteous motivation and say, I know that this is immoral. I'm going to stand up against immorality. I'm going to stand up against injustice. And not to be like Zimri. Zimri acted like a politician who, or anyone else, any of these companies, whoever else that feels the need to please the current mood on Twitter or Facebook or wherever. And Zimri acted in a way that perpetuated the evil actions of the people that had sinned before him. And that's a lesson for us. I think I made my point. Yes, Beth, I agree. And this is what I was saying. I see a lot of comments here on Facebook, actually. He can help people reaching out to the truly deserving Black people. Black one has a different agenda. But he does realize. And this is what I'm saying. This is what this person that I'm talking about is saying. He's motivated by love. And that's like, if you're motivated by love, your actions will come out right. The actions are dangerous when they're motivated by selfish agendas, which is what Zimri had. But if you're motivated by love, then you don't follow after the mob way Zimri did. If you're motivated by love, you're willing to take a risk. What Pinchas did was very dangerous. It was very not politically correct. He stood up against the mob. And therefore people said, oh, he must have bad agenda. He must be a Trump supporter. He must be a stupid, crazy liberal. He must be a racist bigot. Whatever we say today, but other people disagree with us. That's what the Jews did wrong. We can't judge the motivation. We can't say someone's a racist because they don't say Black Lives Matter. We can't say someone's a bigot because they voted for a president. We can't say someone's a homophobe because they said this, they didn't say that, they didn't. They judge the motivations because they couldn't handle someone standing up with love for truth. But Pinchas did it, and that stopped the plague. That stopped the plague. So here's the Torah message for us. First of all, don't judge others. Motivations. Don't judge others' motivations. Judge the actions of not police officers. Even them also. In this context, don't judge the motivation of people. Look at what the results will be. The results of Pinchas' behavior stopped the plague because it was motivated by love, by a desire for truth, and therefore became a priest. Zimri, he wanted to have a good night. He wanted to have fun. And he wanted to be in peace. He wanted to follow the mob that was really leading him. That's not nice to say about whatever. That's the end of my class. I wish you all a lot of blessings. Oh, a few very important announcements. Tomorrow night's class will be at the Jewish Why. Please send me your questions and comments. I'm looking for a general topic to be the topic for tomorrow night's class. Again, we did tonight. I let someone choose the topic. Tomorrow night, someone can choose the topic. Send me a message on Facebook. Send me an email. It's fine. We're in next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we'll be starting our Positivity Bias course. It is a free online 4-week course that will be based on the stories and inspiration of the Rebbe on a positive mindset. We have a very, very interesting course based on a great book called Positivity Bias. Wednesday night's lecture will be Healing the World with Dr. Ali Rosenberg and Rabbi Levi Kaplan, Rabbi Levi Jacobson. It will be connected to the completion of the daily cycle of the study of the Rambam, of which I am a part of. We'll talk about that on Wednesday night. Thursday, there will not be a class. Thursday is the fast of Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. So Thursday, actually, there's a fast day. Maybe we'll show a video or something instead, but I will be fasting at 7:30, 8 o'clock. The fast is over at 8:40, 8:43 is the fast of the 17th of Tammuz. So there'll be no class Thursday night. God willing, next week is the positivity bias. If you have any topics you want to discuss next Monday night, next week's Torah reading, feel free to send me a message. And of course, we are doing our summer raffle for $10,000 cash and for $2,500 for 2 round trips to Israel and some other local prizes. We are here for you. We've been here for you, and we need you to be here for us and to support all of our free classes and all we're doing for the community. So please go mychabadcenter.org/raffle, and you can buy your raffle tickets and support all the work that we are doing. Again, I want to thank you all for watching. I'm open to any comments, publicly, privately. May God bless us all with peace. Pinchas was blessed with the covenant of peace. What our country needs now, more than ever before, is the covenant of peace. I pray for peace, true peace, not where we tear each other apart to pieces, but where we live together in peace, which will begin. Peace will begin when we stop judging the motivation of other people. That's where we'll begin. Good night, my friends.